Welcome to Leapcast. I'm your host, Dr. George James. Leap stands for leaders, entertainers, athletes, and performers. And I'm on a journey to connect with high achievers and highlight their unexamined human moments. Tune in to learn how these high-achieving Leap individuals were able to reach their greatest potential, face their most difficult challenges, and embrace the human moments that helped them along the way. If you want to get the episode highlights directly in your email, then head to theleapcast.com right now to subscribe. I have the honor and the privilege to bring a good friend of mine that I've known for a lot of many years. And he holds so many different identities, and I'm going to just tell you at least three of those. 1, veteran. 2, disabled. 3, actor. And he finds a way how to mix those all up. And so we welcome to Leapcast, Frank Sean Johnson. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Dr. George James. Doctor.
Hey,
appreciate you, man.
Never called me doctor in like 15 years.
Never, ever. Feels funny coming out of my mouth.
So I'm going to accept this, and this is recorded, so that's all right.
That's right. It's true. You've earned it, brother.
I appreciate it. So look, I've known Frank. I call him Sean for a number of years, and how we like to start off this is that we do this thing called talking about your leap story. So just kind of telling people about your journey. And especially for you, like I know that you've had an interesting journey that once again started from you being a man of service, in the military, that then after that, and then how you got to being disabled, to then, your career as an actor. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
We go back to 1990. That's when I joined the military. Almost immediately after basic training, I was deployed to serve during Desert Shield and Desert Storm, the beginning of our conflict. And that was a successful deployment. I served as a mental health specialist for United States Air Force, and saw a lot, experienced a lot, but came home safe. Once I came home, shortly after that, I was shot in the back in my neighborhood in a random dispute, with people I didn't know. I was shot in the back. I was paralyzed.
So
you're about to say something?
No, I was going to remind me because I don't remember. How soon after you came home were you shot?
I think it was. I always feel like it was like immediate, but I think it may have been like a year. I think it could have been close to a year. Yeah. But yeah, I guess it was just the irony of coming from war and, coming back home and then being injured. It was just very ironic. So I got shot twice. I was paralyzed. By the grace of God, I was able to walk again through a lot of prayer, a lot of persistence, I had a really healthy support system. And what I couldn't do and what I couldn't accomplish through my rehab, God did. Really, there was an element there that was totally out of my control. I had doctors telling me, prepare to live your life from a wheelchair. Wow. So I had to forget all the plans I had to be a state trooper, really? To be, to be this big, real estate person. I was going to help my father's construction company get into real estate, and that was going to be my part in his company, his construction. So I had to rethink all that. It said, what can you do from a wheelchair? So it really changed my whole paradigm of career, because now I had to think totally different. So the two options were,
I want to hear the two options. Go ahead.
The two options, with occupational therapy came down to computers and computer repair and dental assistant.
I guess you could do that.
The funny thing is my mom always wanted me to be a dentist. I'm like, oh, maybe this is it. This is how I become a dentist. So I did my little research on both of them, and unfortunately, dentistry requires a lot of math. So, and science, not things I'm necessarily good at. It's like, I didn't.
Wasn't your strong suit, huh?
So I went with computers, had a pretty successful career, 25 plus years in computers. Got to the point where my children were older, and I started to, I'm having some issues with my leg. So going back to some of the fallout from the injury, I was able to walk again.
About how long was that time from when you
I say from the time I couldn't walk to the time I actually stood on my feet, maybe about 8 months. Maybe about 8 months. I was standing, with a walker and, all different kind of apparatus that, helped me walk. Then eventually, I went from crutches to a walker to a long length leg brace because my right side never came back fully. So my knee down on my right side is still paralyzed, was still paralyzed. But I had a leg brace that would secure my leg and allow me to walk upright. So that alone, right. George, was, you know what I mean? That was a blessing. Everything after that was gravy.
So take me to the moment when you find people telling you got shot, paralyzed, people telling you get used to being in a wheelchair, you're not going to walk again.
Yeah.
What was that like when you were able to take those first steps again?
Yeah, well, I think like the big shock wasn't even with the first step. It was with the first movement. Okay. Because I couldn't move. I mean, my waist below it was like somebody else's body. You look at it, you see it, it's yours, you know how to move it, and your brain say, hey, move, and nothing moves. It is the strangest feeling. So one day I was in the hospital. I had a room full of, visitors. I was on, all kind of narcotics. I was always in and out of consciousness. But I remember one time I was out of consciousness. I was conscious rather, and my toe moved. My big toe moved. It was ever so slight. It was like, I was like,
that big toe moving.
Yeah, did y'all see that? And of course, nobody saw it. I saw it, but I remember that being like a definable moment. That was like, it moved. Like, this isn't supposed to move. Yeah. These doctors who
they've been telling you all the time, like, it's not going to get used to the wheelchair.
They're professionals. They're doctors. We believe them. What they say is true, and what they say is fact. And when in fact they're practicing medicine, they're theorizing, medicine. So when that toe moved, man, that was the beginning. So walking was great too. It was very, very difficult. I don't remember like being too excited because it was so much walk. It was so much work. You know what I mean? It was just exhausting mentally, physically, everything. But it was still a great.
Was your coordination?
What's that?
I'm assuming your coordination was off.
Yeah, it was like being I guess what a baby would feel like. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like it's or like I always say it's like walking on stilts. When you're drunk.
Now that's an image.
Yeah, right. Like, not that I've done that, but I would imagine stilts and drunk don't really mix.
They don't go together. I just want to highlight at this point, right? Like, one, even though the two weren't connected, we know there's so many servicemen and servicewomen who do give their life for the country, for service, and they do get injured. They do get shot. They have to go through kind of what you had to go through. And then there's just people in everyday life who have been shot or hurt in some way and have to rehabilitate. And so I just want to shout out like what it takes to recover, and the rehab is not easy. I mean, mentally, like, what did you have to tell yourself? I mean, yes, your big toe gave you some energy and encouragement when that happened, but what were you going through mentally during that time?
Yeah, well, it was despair, man. I mean, the worst you think you can feel, I felt, that's what it was. It was hopelessness, not feeling worthy anymore, feeling less than a man. I actually equated, my masculinity with, my physicality.
Yeah.
I can't stand, like, how can I be a man and not stand? How can I be a man and be at eye level with children? How can I be a man and be at eye level with adults belly buttons?
Yeah.
It's just these things you never think of, but it's like,
Right.
wow, even like in film, you know what I mean? When you want to capture a specific mood or energy of a scene, you either shoot up when you want to show somebody's authority, you shoot the camera up, or you want to show down. And my camera was always shooting up, so I always felt like everybody had authority over me.
Wow.
So that was tough, man. It was tough, but God always gave me what I needed in every situation that I felt myself in. And it really started when the moment I woke up every morning. When I woke up, I was blessed to have a roommate who was a quadriplegic.
Yeah.
So I can't remember what his injury was or how it happened, but he was paralyzed from his chest down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from the chest down. So every day I'm in the room with this guy who has got it worse than I do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I had perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Like, wow, yeah, this is terrible, but man, and he was like, in my mind, he was in a good mood. You know what I mean? And in my mind, he was really handling it well. So that always gave me some kind of balance. Like, it could be worse. So that was the one thing I held on to. It was could be worse. And then my faith was always present that I was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I was going to walk again. But I believed that if I stayed positive, if I worked hard, that I'd be okay, whatever that meant. You know what I mean? So it really just all worked out, and it's working out.
No, I love those things that, sometimes we're in despair or we don't feel enough. We don't feel man enough. We don't feel woman enough. We don't feel good enough. And, but I love how you were able to get to this place of, perspective, right? Let me look around. Let me look around the room. Let me look around in my
Right.
life. And for a
Yeah.
lot of people, that brings them to gratitude, right? I have
Yes.
something to be grateful for, right?
Yes.
And then the other part is like, you said your faith, right? That you're able to hold on to that and to say that no matter what, and it sounds like you have to say this in your mind and repeat and remember that I will be okay. No matter what the
Yeah.
situation is, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. And the challenge with that, George, is do I have to call you George? I have to call you doctor?
And you
I'm just wondering. I don't know what protocol is, but the problem is Dr. James
you can't
is
just say George.
is the information coming in always seems to be more than the information you're withholding. So, I wake up in the morning, I can see I'm paralyzed.
Mm-hmm.
I can wake up, I can see I can't get up and go to the bathroom on my own. I can wake up and I see I went to the bathroom on myself throughout the night. I can see people looking at me, and I think they're looking at me because I'm disabled. So all that information is always coming in, always coming in. And unless you talk to yourself more than that, you're always going to find yourself, on unbalanced. You're always going to find yourself fighting to feel better. So yeah, man, and being in the hospital as long as I was, and having time alone, after everybody left and you're there by yourself, you got a lot of time to talk to yourself. The question is, what are you saying?
Yeah.
What are you saying to yourself? So
that self-talk is so important. And like you said, like, I haven't always thought about it that way until you just said that, is that there's a moment where people are not there. Friends, family, doctors, nurses, right? Nurses, assistant, right? All those folks, right, might not be there, and you're left to yourself and your thoughts.
Yeah.
And that might be the early morning, that might be at night, that might be at 2 or 3 a.m. and that you have to really deal with. And I was talking with another guest on a show that was talking about how you really got to practice that self-talk to the place where you start to tell yourself, I like myself, I love myself, or it's gonna be okay, which it sounds like that's what you were doing.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, so you got to that part, right? You start walking, the big toe, start giving you signs. You start movement, you start walking. What happens from that point?
Rehab, just continue to work hard at it because it's something I still do. You know what I mean? I'm still rehabbing. And so it was, let's say 20 years of like incremental, improvements. So I went from a long length leg brace and a cane to without the cane, and then the leg brace to half a leg brace. And then it was there for a long time. The problem was at the time it was close to 300 pounds. The brace that I was wearing kept breaking because I was still active. Yeah, I was still trying to play ball. You know what I mean? I was still
I
doing
think
all
you
kinds
did
of.
try to
Plus, I
play
was a.
ball with me with that brace on. Like, what you
it
got, son?
break. Like so. It was the challenge, but I was, like I said, I was walking. I was fine, and so in fast forward to May of 2013, I actually lost that right leg. I had it amputated due to MRSA. I contracted virus during one of my surgeries. I had 13 altogether, and one of the
13
last
surgeries?
ones, huh?
You said you had 13 surgeries?
Yeah, my last one was the 13th one.
Wow.
So over the last 20 years, it's been that many. But a lot of them, like 10 of them, were all like within a, a few years. Because I got this infection, and then that was just kind of like the end of it. It was 2 years of trying to get it cleaned out, and they couldn't. And so the best thing was to literally, cut my losses. So I've been an amputee now since 2013. Which was a new chapter.
Yeah.
It's a new chapter. It's functionally, I'm much better. Before it was a paralyzed leg and a plastic brace. I was just kind of lugging this leg around. Now I have this prosthetic, which is, very, very capable. It's very technologically, it's the latest and the greatest. I've got legs for different things. You know what I mean? Like I'm switching legs, like I'm Batman. You know what I mean? I got my utility belt full of legs, and so whether it's swimming or running or I just got a new robotic leg. This is my new one, $55,000. Thank you, VA. The VA
Wow.
picks up that bill. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to get to that connection there too, but I want to go back, right? Because in knowing you and being connected to you, and friends, and we have our history as actors and performing, and I actually was concerned for you, right? Well, knowing the journey that you went through,
Mm-hmm.
and getting to this place where you were, feeling better, moving, and then you learn you have to amputate your leg. I really thought, like, if anything is going to make you depressed, if anything is going to make you lose it, it would be to the thought of having to amputate your leg. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you didn't struggle, but
Right.
I've actually shared with students and clients about this thing called post-traumatic growth, which is where people are able to grow from traumatic situations.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess tell me, how did you not lose it, or struggle more, especially mentally, when you learned you had to amputate your leg, or decided to amputate your leg?
I think it goes back to faith, George. That still applies. That formula applies across the board. I'm going to be okay. I know that for a fact. I have no question about that anymore. So whatever comes up, I mean, it's still going to fall under that criteria. I even think about, and I think I prepare myself too. You know what I mean? You know how some people think the worst. You know what I mean? They think the worst because so if the worst happens, they're not so taken off guard. I'll think the worst only to prepare myself for it. I'll think, okay, what's the worst that can happen? If it does happen, how am I going to respond? And then I can kind of see myself through it when I'm in it. So it's not so jarring. I thought about what if my other leg gets amputated, because it's very possible. This leg still has a lot of issues. I just like a week ago, I just started wearing what's called a MAFO brace on my left leg, which is kind of like the one I used to wear on my right, because I have drop foot on my left. I always have, but it's getting worse. It's getting, the pandemic had something to do with me not being as active. So, you don't use muscles, atrophy sets in. So in a leg that's already partially paralyzed, atrophy sets in. That's like, it's a bad combination. So I've been tripping a lot and falling. So I got this brace on here. But it's possible that this leg could get amputated too. But this is what I did, George. I was talking to my prosthetist, and I said, okay, so
your what?
Prosthetist.
Okay.
I know it's hard to say. That's why I tried to say it quick, but you caught me. See, you called me out on that. I was like,
I didn't. I haven't heard the word, and I just want to make sure you wasn't.
Yeah.
I just want to make
sure.
It's
the guys who make my prosthetic.
Okay.
Yeah. So I said, if I lose my other leg, then and I have to get two, prosthetics, could I get longer prosthetics and become like 6'3", 6'4"?
You were like, think about like, can I be taller?
Yeah, like
a little bit taller.
I get baller. What? I'm getting back on the court. I said, so it's things like that. And I'm serious. Like, I probably would, like, all right, let's hike it up an inch. You know what I mean? Something. But it's things like that, that helps me to cope. You know what I mean? And try to find the best possible feeling in a situation. I like to, I've self-proclaimed myself to be the master of the silver lining. There's always a bright spot, no matter how dark the room is, if there's just a beacon of light anywhere in that room, it's so easy to see and it's so easy to focus on than to focus on this sea of darkness.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah. No, I think that's important. So many people are in challenging situations, tough situations, where they feel overwhelmed, or they don't think it's going to be okay, or they don't have a support system, or they haven't game planned, the worst case scenario. And, but to hear what you're saying, right, is that like, at the same time, what is a silver lining? What is that thing that is going to bring light or hope? And so I think to me that's what I found inspiring in what you were able to do, because this is the time now where, because you were in the military and came out, and now because you were injured, you went back and, well, you were always connected, but it sounds like you deepened your connection with the VA. And how did that open up this whole athletic thing that you started to do even more?
It was through their programs at the VA, their recreational programs. I think it all started in physical therapy. When I was going through physical therapy, I just decided, I wanted to push myself. I realized I wasn't going to get better unless I pushed past what I thought I could do. So I was pushing so hard with physical therapy that I was getting under the skin of some of the therapists there, because they weren't doing enough. You know what I mean? They're like, lift your leg. Yeah, it's like, come on, man. You know what I mean? Like, let's walk some steps.
Right.
Let's go walk the steps. When I go home, I got 12 steps to get to the second level. I got 7 to get into my house. Like, I need steps. And he said, we will really don't do that, because the only steps they had was in the fire, stairs or whatever. And, they're concrete, you know what I mean? They just didn't want that liability. I said, I fought it, and then finally they approved it. But that was kind of the start. And then, the director of the athletic department or whatever in the VA was telling me about, what was it? I think it was sled hockey or rowing. I can't remember which one it was, but it was adaptive hockey, which is called sled hockey. And it was adaptive rowing down at the Schuylkill River in Philadelphia. And that was kind of like my first athletic experience as a disabled person. And that was it, man. I fell in love with that. And then I met a guy there, Jimmy, who told me about basketball. I was like, what? Like, yeah, man, we play
Say what?
basketball. Yeah, he's an amputee like me. He's like big guy, big tall guy. Like, yeah, we play basketball. We meet here. Blah, blah, blah. You should check it out. So, and then that was really it. That's my love, basketball. But I've since been able to compete in nationally. I have gold, silver, bronze medals in basketball, softball, tennis, track and field. The list goes on. So whatever can be done adaptively, I'm doing it.
Didn't you ski? Didn't you go to Aspen?
Yeah, yeah. I've been to Aspen. I skied, swam. I got a medal for swimming. Yeah, the skiing thing, man. That was the toughest thing I had to do.
Really?
That was
Why?
I actually cried at the bottom of the hill when I came down. For one, because it was tough. It was hard. And two, I accomplished it. I did it. I was like I'm skiing, really? It was overwhelming. It was really overwhelming. Yo, funny story, really quick.
Go ahead.
When I was going up on the lift, right, and I was with two guys. They were my trainers. They were with me. They had this bar that I held in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
They held them on the outside, and we went down, and they made sure I didn't, kill anybody or myself. But when we were going up on the lift, because of the elevation and the altitude and all like that, my stump, had contracted
Okay.
and got smaller, and my leg came off on the lift. Like, so we're just sitting there, and I hear this, I hear this sound like, you know what I mean? Like suction, like, what was that? And then I felt my leg get cold. I'm like, and looked down, and 40 feet down, my leg was sticking upside down in the snow.
So random people are skiing around.
Yeah. People are skiing like, what the? Somebody really, really wiped out. But that was really fun. But yeah, man. So, that opened up a whole world to me. Like, wow, I'm not as disabled, as I think I am. And that's kind of like the whole drive behind adaptive sports, is that you can do all the things you have done. You just have to adapt them and do them differently. So
No, and that's what I mean about post-traumatic growth, because this was traumatic. You got shot, you were disabled, you were paralyzed, and then regained and then lost, I had your leg amputated, and what I saw you do was more athletically than you were doing before.
Yeah, no doubt.
Adaptive sports, like you were doing, like you just said, from on the water, on the skiing, basketball, like whatever, you were doing all these things. And I know the VA has its challenges, but I wonder, like, do you think that you would have done that if you didn't have both your military experience and going through this process of trying to find a new life after being an amputee?
I can't see it going the same way. I can't, I just, I don't know. Like, I don't know where the inspiration would have come from, but I do trust, because of my faith, that it would have come.
Mm-hmm.
By whatever means a vehicle would have came, it would have come eventually.
So you did all that, right? Now you're like, you're playing wheelchair basketball. You're all over the place, right? You're competing nationally, all these different things. But you've always loved performing, being an actor, writing, and I know that. So how did it move to the place where you are now doing more as an actor? Or I guess tell us that part of your story.
Yeah. Well, that began with when I started having trouble with my leg. This is when I still had it. This is at the end of that 2-year process of trying to get well. I was working in IT. I was off on medical leave because of these issues. And so when everything was said and done, and I'm like, okay, it's time to go back to, I lost the one job. They couldn't hold it for any longer, but I had to get back to work. And so I said, okay, I'm looking for these jobs. I'm like, well, do I really want to go back to IT? So I'm starting to think different now. My kids are older. They're not depending on me as much. At that time I was approaching 50, and I'm like, okay, this is, I'm feeling a little different about my life now. I want to be happy. That was my whole thing. What do I need to do to be happy?
Yeah.
Let's make it simple. Let's make it very simple. It's never been money. I've never chased money. Um, I've chased experiences, a feeling, you know what I mean? I just want to feel good. And so I said, okay, what do I want to do? What's going to make me happy? And I've always loved acting. I've always loved that. So I said, let's get in, let's do that. Let's just play around with it and see what happens and then see where it goes. And that kind of launched my acting career.
Nice.
You know? But I
And
got a lot of experience in church as well. That's more with the live performance, more theater, with the ministry, drama ministry at my church. So that got me, and that was years ago. That was before, any of this. I was able to start writing and get on stage and, start to learn you know, the craft,
mhm.
but it didn't really elevate until after the amputation. Then I started thinking about film and television, and that's kind of where I am now.
Yeah, I think there's something about going through challenges or struggles where you have some choices, right? You could decide to say like, you know what, woe is me, or my life is tough, or and that's real, right? People are
Yeah,
depressed or overwhelmed, and I see that with a lot of my clients. But then there's another part of saying, well, what do I have to lose but to go after like my passion, my heart, my happiness? And it sounds like you
right.
chose that path. Like, you know what, I want to be happy, and I'm going to go after that. And so as an actor, I mean, we'll get into more of this, but what do you enjoy about being an actor? Why is that something that makes you happy?
Um, I think I've always liked telling the story. You know what I mean? Ever since I was a kid, I wrote stories, I wrote poems, and then I got into rap, so I've always loved to tell the story in a creative way. And so acting to me is telling a story. You know what I mean? It's not yours, or it could be yours. But it's just, and inspirational pieces are specifically, what I like, because I like to change people's perspective, or I like to add to it, or I like to make them think. And I think, with acting, you have to really empty yourself.
Hmm.
I think that's very therapeutic for me, to just be able to let myself go and put on something else, over top of that. And I mean, that's hard to do, because the more hangups you have about yourself,
Yeah.
the harder it is to be vulnerable enough to be vulnerable. You know what I mean? It's hard to do that. And so it's always a check, mental health check sometimes in these roles, because, you really have to be comfortable in your own skin,
Yeah.
and you have to be okay with rejection. You know what I mean? This field, I mean, what is it? 90% rejection. You know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
if it's that low. So you really have to be comfortable with yourself. So I think it all just ties in, because there is some, there's some, I have some negative feelings about my situation. There's no doubt about that. I would rather not be in this situation, and I would rather not everybody staring at my leg. I would rather not, some having that type of attention all the time. So, like I said earlier, I'm still talking to myself. I'm always talking to myself, because the information is still always coming in.
Yeah.
But the acting helps keep me there. It helps keep me there. It's like it asks me that question constantly. Are you okay? Are you okay? And
Yeah.
while I'm doing that, I'm always okay.
Yeah, it sounds like being an actor is like, for you, has been like having a friend that checks in on you, right? That allows you to just,
Hmm.
be at your best, but also be real and authentic. That you can't
Yes.
fake with your friend acting, right? Like
Right.
that you like as an actor, you just can't do that. What would you say has been one of your biggest highlights or best moment as an actor?
Probably my first job. Um, my first job, I was on the show Madam Secretary. right? So it was a backup actor job. I was just gonna. They were looking for actual veterans, actual disabled veterans, to be in this scene in Madam Secretary where the president in the show was addressing us at this VA facility. And it's okay, so I did it, and I'm there, and they're moving you around. So they got me sitting, kind of far off to the side. So we run a couple takes. It's exciting. This is my first time here. I'm like looking at people. Oh, I've seen him. Oh, I remember him in that movie. I remember that movie. And then so one of the PAs comes over and says, "Oh, we're gonna move you. We just want to move you over. They're moving me around." So I get closer. Now I'm like pretty close to the main character. I say, "Oh wow, that's cool." And as a rule, you're not supposed to talk to the talent. And if they address you, you can talk to them. But he's right next to me. I didn't say anything to him, but he started a conversation with me in between takes. And the last conversation we had, he said, "You know what?" He's like, "This is what this scene is missing." He said, "Dialogue." He's like, "Otherwise, I'm just kind of a president making a speech, and that's been done 1,000 times." And he's like, said, "Hold up." Next thing you know, somebody comes over to me and said, "We're gonna give you some lines."
You got upgraded like 3 times.
Yeah, exactly. And didn't try.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it just happened. And so they said, "We're not gonna really give you lines, but we want you guys to have a conversation," which is what we were just doing anyway, right? So so whatever he says, just have a conversation with him. So that's just improv. I love improv. I was like, okay, this is perfect.
This is
So, and what's that?
You said, "This is my thing. I can improv."
Yeah, this is my thing, right up my alley. So that's how that went. And I got the lines. They upgraded me. The money was great because well, it was a high mark. I think I went from like making $150 to like $950, like just by saying my name. You know what I mean? It was, and that was just a great experience to start off my career that way, because that also told me that all the success that I'm going to have in this industry isn't going to come from me manipulating and and maneuvering and trying to. The grace of God will just allow me to be in certain positions in certain places that will afford me certain opportunities. And that's exactly what happened.
I think that's great. And there have been, I've had my time on set and being one of those folks, and that's like one of those things that you always hear, right? Like, there's always a chance you can get upgraded. And I'm like, it never happened to me, right? I was never chosen to say like, okay, right? So like, but to know that it does happen is really good, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've had other experiences that were cool, but like that definitely sounds amazing, like to be there. And I'm wondering that moment when you got kind of upgraded, you had that experience, like what did you do, or who did you share that with, or what, how did you take that in after that happened?
I kind of, the funny thing is, going back to before it happened, I knew something was going to happen. I remember driving in, I had to get up at 5 o'clock. I think I had like a six, no, it was a 7 o'clock call time in New York or something. And I remember driving in, and I was like, I got this feeling. It was almost words that I got, and it was like, "You're gonna pop, you're gonna pop," and it was just, "You're gonna pop." I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna pop, I'm gonna pop," and apparently, and I popped. I popped right out of the crowd, and so I got, I felt that confirmation before it happened, which was great, So afterwards, it was just, wasn't like, "Oh my God, this happened." It was like it happened. Like I knew it was going to happen. You know what I mean? I just had a confidence about it. But, I shared it with I shared it with some people, I guess. I don't know. Sometimes I can be so nonchalant about it.
It's like, it happened.
Like, yeah, of course it happened. Duh.
Big deal. Well, everything like that you're sharing is really great, and so there's a few questions that I like to ask folks, as we wrap up. One, what are you working on now, or what are some things, some projects that you've been involved with, some things that you want to just share with us that you've been doing?
Well, I took a the last class I took was a writing class, is a comedy sitcom writing class with Brent Forrester, who's the writer of The Office. That class has been phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal to get me locked in as a writer. So I'm working on that. I have a sitcom idea that I'm working on, a YouTube channel. I'm trying to put together a sketch comedy YouTube channel. I have a couple screenplays that my business partner is shopping. So I've had those for quite a while, but I haven't. But they are, part of my passion. So they're in the works. Other than that, just still doing some background stuff. I'm gonna be looking to join the union soon, so I can start going for some more major roles. So I don't know. I love to do everything, man. I love to be in front of the camera, behind the camera. So I just won a Best Actor, Best Supporting Actor award in the Atlantic City Sin Fest.
That's awesome. See,
yeah,
this is what you mean. It's like, oh, it just happened. It's
I
like,
know. I know.
I'm just so used to all these great things happening.
If I had a collar, I'd pop it.
Right.
But I didn't even go to the event, like where they were premiering the thing. I was working. I had to do something else. But I got a call from the director. He told me, hey, you won Best Supporting Actor. So I was like, it's really cool. It's my first award. That's awesome. I didn't even get my hands on the trophy yet, but so that was.
I mean, I think that's also part of this, right? This thought of like things that allow you to feel like I'm moving in the right direction, right? From, you said, I'm going to pop to like the award to just being happy, like these things that you've really strived for. I know that you also mentioned that you were in a Walking Dead episode. Did that come out yet, or is that about to come out?
Oh yeah, it did come out. I don't know what episode it is, to be honest, but I got a little robbed in that joint. I was down there for 4 days, and I think I'm in the background, all blurred out or something. I was playing a painter in the town square, so I didn't get much play on that one, but I've been on MacGyver, like I said, Madam Secretary, a couple of times, For Life when that was at FBI. I think something else, but I can't remember.
It sounds like you've been building your reel, and it's going well. If you had the opportunity to work with anyone, whether as a writer or a performer, who would you want to work with?
That's a good question. Don Cheadle. Okay. Love Don Cheadle. Leonardo DiCaprio, Denzel, Will Smith. These all guys. Any women I want to work with all the women.
All the women.
Well, those are the guys I kind of, admire. You know what I mean? Those guys. So in their body of work. So, I think it'll still happen. It'll happen. They'll call me one day, asking me.
Hey, you said it here, right? So right. So
I'll let you know.
Well, good. Hopefully you'll let me know instead of like I find out that you won the award like much later on. 2 last questions I like to ask. What does mental wellness mean for you?
I think mental wellness is having peace. You know what I mean? In my shirt, I don't know if you guys can read it, but it says addicted to peace. And that could mean so much. You know what I mean? That's such a vague and vast idea. But peace, in my definition, is being okay with where you are, where you've been, and where you're going, and finding that sweet spot that allows you to be happy in the moment, regardless of what is going on in your environment. So, I think mental wellness comes automatically when you're okay right now. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right now, because all we have is now, George. That's all we have is right at this very moment. So I think for me, simplifying mental wellness is being okay right now, whatever you have to do for that.
No, I love that, right? And one piece, being happy, being in the moment, being present, as we say so often.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we can be present and not happy, and present and not in a good place. And so
Sure.
I like to be that. So great. Last question. What mental wellness advice would you give to your earlier, younger self? And that could be as younger as yesterday
Mm-hmm.
or many years ago.
Don't sweat the small stuff. Focus on the big picture, which is going to take me back to my faith.
Yeah.
Life is good.
Right, which goes back to, like you said, being able to like enjoy these moments, knowing that sometimes struggle or pain or suffering might happen, but it doesn't mean there's not good. That doesn't mean it's over. Doesn't mean that you can't have good times. And I really appreciate what you've shared, your journey, from being in the military, being shot, being disabled, uh, adaptive sports, all the way to being a performer and writer and actor, and all the things that you've been able to do with that. And I think like there's just so much that you shared. And once again, for me, this thought of like, despite whatever can happen, we can have peace, we can have happiness, and we can have growth. And I think like that's what I am taking away from what you shared today. This is Frank Sean Johnson, from being a veteran to being shot and disabled, to being an actor, to being happy and addicted to peace. I really appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Dr. J.
Yeah. Are you about to stretch your
Bye.
leg? See, here we go.
Bye.
There it is.
I'm so flexible. I've been working out.
That's what that is? You've been working
Yeah.
out? Well, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one. God bless.
Thanks. Wow. What an incredible ride we just went on with another great member of the Leapcast community. I appreciate you listening and hope you got some tangible value from the episode. Please let us know what you think by leaving a comment, rating, and review. As always, please don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is Dr. George James, and I'll see you next time.